On September 21st and September 22nd, Manitoba will have a taste of the French city of Marseille here in the province. Winnipeg's foremost new music organization, GroundSwell, will welcome to Winnipeg and Brandon the acclaimed ensemble from Marseille, Ensemble Télémaque. They will be performing at 7:30 on September 21st at the Théâtre Cercle Molière here in Winnipeg, and at 7:30 September 22nd at Brandon University's Lorne Watson Recital Hall. Founded by artistic director Raoul Lay in 1994, Ensemble Telemaque's mission has been to connect Marseille and the ensemble with composers and audiences around the world via international performances. In the process, the ensemble has become one of the most esteemed new music ensembles in the world, premiering many compositions written for the amazing musicians of the ensemble and exposing audiences to incredible new sounds. Joining me here over Zoom to talk about Ensemble Telemaque's performances here in Winnipeg and Brandon, I am joined by composer and curator for this concert's Jim Hiscott. Hi, Jim. Nice to see you here over Zoom.
Hi, Chris. Well, thanks for inviting me to be on your show.
Mm-hmm. This is the opening concert for GroundSwell's 2022-2023 season, and it has been long overdue. Can you talk a little bit about the collaboration with Ensemble Télémaque that GroundSwell started in 2017, and specifics such as how you met the director, Raoul Lay, and the compositional exchange program that the two of you came up with?
Sure. I met Raoul very briefly, actually, quite a long time ago, 2010, at one of their concerts in Marseille, because we were there. Andrea was on sabbatical leave, and we were staying in the south of France. And and then I met him again through the work that I did with the International Society for Contemporary Music. We put on a large festival of new music in Vancouver in 2017, a world festival. And Raoul was the French delegate. So we met again and chatted and reconnected and talked a lot about what's happening there and in France and here. And I had so part this concert, the conversation evolved to an invitation to do something with Canada, because they for many years they've been collaborating with composers from other countries. For example, in 2010 there was a number of young composers from Brazil who were involved in that concert in Marseille. But they just started this series a few years ago, a couple of years ago, where they have a specific exchange with a country around the world. And before they were in doing it with Canada. Um, they were in Shanghai, for example, and so they commission composers from that country, and then those composers come to Marseille for the premieres of their pieces, and then Ensemble Télémaque travels to the host country, the partner country, to give the premieres of those pieces in that country. So that's what we're experiencing now, and so we worked over that plan, and we did the commissions, and pieces were written, and but then of course we had the pandemic happened, and we were unable to do part two, where they come to Canada. It was supposed to have happened back in 2020. So here we are in 2022. Finally, we're able to do that. So we're really excited about that. Really excited that they're going to be here, and we're very happy to be hosting them in Manitoba, both in
Mm-hmm.
Winnipeg and Brandon.
Mm-hmm. My understanding is that there's four Canadian pieces that the Ensemble Telemaque is performing here, and these pieces were performed also in Marseille in 2019. You were at that concert. Can you talk a little bit about that? And what was it like working with Ensemble Telemaque?
Yeah, so those were the pieces we sort of chose. Not the pieces, but the composers to write a piece, and we looked across. Raul wanted to have a representation from across the country, and so I know quite a number of these composers, especially since just having been involved with the ICM festival in Vancouver. I've been seeing a lot of music and hearing music, and so we chose composers, from Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, and Winnipeg, and and trying to get a different uh, range of range of styles, different styles, also different ages, different kind of real diversity, balancing also with a gender balance in the selection of those four composers.
Hmm.
And so Becca Sims, for example, had been involved in a number of our uh, calls for scores, and I'd heard her music, and she represented Canada in a couple of these international festivals, as had James, and it was really really happy to have both of them, and they're both in the younger period of their careers, and Rita Ueda had represented Canada, I think, in 3 different World Music Days over the years, and she's a really interesting composer from Vancouver, and so they in a different style. So all of these styles are different. Her music, for example, Rita Ueda's has more in this particular piece more of a theatrical element to it, and a lot of her pieces have to do with rain. So there's kind of a feeling of nature, but also kind of um, sort of a kind of a mixed tonality of um, sensual kind of a sound.
Hmm.
Um, and and Becca and James are really into texture or sonic texture, a little bit more angular music. Although in this particular case, Becca's piece is quite quiet, and James's piece is a little bit more boisterous. Um, but so there, and my own piece is a little bit more melodic, and it's not really theatrical, although there's kind of a dialogue that goes through it um,
Hmm. And the
between
James, sorry, and the James you're talking about is James O'Callahan, right?
James O'Callahan. Yeah, James
Yeah, yeah.
O'Callahan. Sorry. Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
James O'Callahan, a really great composer, and all of them they represent different parts of the country, and so we thought that would make a nice mix of Canadian content for the concert in Marseille.
Hmm.
And so Télémaque, from those pieces, first they have to wait, see what the pieces sound like, and they constructed a program around those pieces, involving some French music and some American music. Also, their ensemble for this concert is with a singer, a soprano,
Hmm.
Brigitte Peyre, who's excellent soprano, also very good in the acting area. So she's very, she really personifies characters and stuff. So that really goes along with the theatrical aspect.
Hmm.
Um, and they have a stage director too, Olivier Pauls, who um, who constructed sort of a scenario. So the show kind of has it's music foreground, and the group's sort of on stage, so it's a staged concert. But there's which the audience will discover when they come. There's some a theatrical dimension as well.
Yeah, I was watching a YouTube video of Ensemble Télémaque, and the YouTube video I saw it was actually there was some humor in the video as well, right?
Humor,
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
There's there's humor, and it's great. I mean, how often do you get humor in a new music concert?
One of the things I noticed about when I was looking at the program is the 4 pieces written by the Canadians are written for the same instrumentation: soprano, flute, clarinet, timpani, percussion, violin, and cello. Was this one of the parameters of the commission? Can you talk a little bit about that? Why it was written for those specific instruments?
Yes, it was the ensemble. Raoul said these are the instruments that we're going to dedicate for this show. Ensemble Telemark is actually bigger than this. They have different kinds of ensembles which they put together from different. They have a large collection of musicians.
Hmm.
But for this concert, this was the instrumentation, so we could make it very clear. And so composers could write from anything a part of or the whole group or whatever, but everyone chose to write for the entire ensemble.
Hmm.
And so in putting together the program. The other pieces are have maybe sometimes solo pieces, sometimes smaller chamber ensembles. So that's how Ensemble Télémaque, if you will, set those 4 Canadian pieces in this concert program.
Mhm. There's also, in addition to the 4 Canadian composers, there's also music by 3 French composers and 1 American. One of the things I was noticing is the music was written in the 90s, and in the case of one piece, it was written in 1978. Were those pieces performed when you saw the concert in Marseille? What can you tell us about those pieces?
Uh, yeah, they were in Marseille. Um, they It was basically pretty much the same program. There maybe one small change, but so all those pieces were in the program in Marseille, um, and they're quite short pieces. The first piece is trumpet solo. Um, the, um, the second, I won't go through it in all detail, but a lot of them are songs, and um, the program really focuses on singing and songs, and that ends up playing into the sort of humor of the show. So some of these songs are, if you look at the lyrics, and we will have a text sheet when you get to the concert. Um, they're quite amusing. For example, Max Lifshitz has pieces about insects and honey, and he has a piece called "Do Animals Think?" And they're kind of
Farcical?
farcical, and so that really comes out in the performance. And the recitation by Georges Apargy is a really crazy dialogue with what's written right at the score is when the singer is supposed to laugh and yawn and do this and do that, and the words are almost nonsensical. So it's a crazy score to look at, all in different colors and everything. So that's, for example, that's a solo vocal piece. And then a piece by Pascal Dusapin, who's a well-known composer of a slightly younger generation in France, is more of a serious kind of a poem by Giacomo Leopardi. So yeah, there's a lot of variety, and those pieces interspersed with the Canadian pieces are what creates the kind of musical tapestry for this show, which has also a theatrical element.
Mhm.
and in that theatrical element, Rita Ueda's piece, "If Only Raindrops," is sort of the kind of climax of that,
Huh.
and it's based on raindrop sounds, for example.
Mhm. You touched on it a little bit before. Your piece. Can you talk a little bit about this? Your piece, "Sweet at Dawn." It was written in 2019. What can you tell us about this piece?
Um, well, it was written knowing that this concert was going to be performed in Marseille and in Canada, and so I was looking for a text which had some French and English in it, and all over the place. I finally found this one, which was actually written, hundreds of years ago, but it has sort of a theatrical dimension, in that it's kind of a conversation between. Well, it's mostly a monologue actually, but there are 2 people present. So there's Venus, the goddess of love, and there's Adonis, who's a beautiful young man who's either a god or a human, somewhere in between.
Mhm.
And she's being the goddess of love, everyone is attracted to her, but she's attracted to Adonis, but he doesn't seem to be interested. So so she's trying to convince him with this, and with this text, and it's basically Venus who's singing, and you can imagine her pleading with, and Adonis is sitting there in front of him, in front of her, being not as responsive as she would like. So it has elements of classical myth, but also you could think of today's world because all these characters in a lot of these characters in Greek myth were actually quite young. You can imagine they'd be probably teenagers or in their 20s or something. So it's kind of a conversation you could imagine happening everywhere today. Um, so that's the basis of the text, and then I'm trying to conjure different emotions and that sort of thing throughout the piece. Um, and Brigitte really brings out that the theatrical dimension, and so it's both serious and lighthearted sort of a piece.
It's going to be great. One of the things I'm curious about is are the other three Canadian composers, Becca Sims, James O'Callaghan, and Rita Ueda, are they coming to Winnipeg to see this performance with Ensemble Télémaque on the 21st?
Um, Rita Ueda will be here, and she's very excited about it. Unfortunately, Becca and James are, over the years, they're not able to come because I think James has just moved to Berlin, and Becca's got a job in Scotland. So,
Yeah. Enough
so they're
said.
not able to be here, unfortunately. But they're here in spirit anyway.
I'll wrap up the conversation this way. After these last 2 years of craziness and Michigas, how does it feel to be back having live performances with Groundswell?
It's exciting, and we did have a concert with Curator Jim back in March, but just planning for it and that people being there and that we've done several concerts which are mostly seen online, which
Mm,
are great. They were great too, and I was at some of those. We actually had a couple of live concerts a year ago, but probably many people saw them online. But it is really good to be back in person, and it's very important. A lot of these pieces, like what I'm describing here, there's a theatrical dimension, there's emotions, there's the real
humor.
sounds of humor, the real
Mm,
sounds of the instruments. They're the kind of pieces where you want there to be interchange, or between musicians and performers. Um,
mm.
but on the day before our first concert, we have a concert with students of Collège Louis Riel. And to have that kind of interaction where people can ask questions and answer from the conductor, that, because they're here, the musicians
Mm,
are here. There's all kinds of things you can do, and a very different experience an audience can have sitting there and being able to laugh and respond. And I remember back to the concerts in Marseille, and they had really good audiences, and they're clapping and such excitement and connectivity. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that here now that we can have concerts
hmm
again.
It's going to be great. Jim, it's been great reconnecting again. The concerts on the 21st and 22nd sound like they're going to be just fantastic. For our Classic 107 listeners, I will provide a direct link to the Groundswell Eventbrite page on our website, classic107.com, or you can go to gswell.ca for more details. The concerts are pay what you can, how you can, and tickets are available online or at the door by cash or check. Jim, this has just been great. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Chris.